Hi everyone, this is my brand new channel. I've decided to make one based on the suggestion of my friends, Irate Bear, Bloodwing, and Miss Misa. They're all fantastic content creators in their own right, so I recommend checking them out after my video, of course. But the short description of what this channel is about, well, simply put, it's a channel devoted to anything I find nerdy enough to talk about: video games, anime, various science junk, whatever suits my mood. I won't always be right, but I'll try to stay passionate. If that's the sort of thing you're into, great. Well, if it isn't, then how'd you find me? Now that the introductions are done with, let's talk about my very first topic. You'll hear kids born in the early 80s up through the early 90s talk about how much games have changed and how we're all being handheld compared to how hard it used to be, and all that good jazz. Well, today we're going to talk about whether or not any of that is true and how games have changed and evolved in many years mainstream games have been available. Now, don't expect me to go into furious detail or anything. This is my first video, and I'm not sure we're ready for that quite yet, but let's break it a bit. Difficulty is skill-based. To me, I can't remember video games being any harder than good old NES games. Games like Thunderbird, Ghouls and Ghosts, they were just nearly impossible. And Battletoads, forget about it. I just like the hover bikes, even though I couldn't pass those levels for anything. See, back when you didn't have a whole lot of space on a cartridge, you had to extend the game's life cycle in a way that you could still find it challenging and still get to the goal, but cry a lot in absolute frustration. Sure, 5-year-old me may not have been the best at that sort of thing, but even the 32-year-old me now can barely pass some of that old stuff. The aforementioned Battletoads, for instance, gave us fast-paced gameplay that required you to eventually memorize patterns and tone your reflexes to the point that you treat your controller like a game assignment. If you don't manage, well, you're going to have a bad time. Some might argue that this isn't skill-based in terms of reactionary gameplay. Some say that it's a memory-only puzzle, and that one couldn't turn it into skills in, let's say, a first-person shooter, for instance. Citing games like Call of Duty and Battlefield as sources, they would say that they're being presented with an unplannable challenge is much more difficult and more rewarding than having to remember how to do things in a linear fashion. Well, it might surprise both that the archetypes on these are both valid, and you need both set of skills to be what I would consider a quintessential gamer. Now, you can focus on one or the other and still enjoy it and still be really good at it, but I think being well-rounded is better overall, but that's just my opinion. So, kids like myself we were lucky enough to have access to some of the greatest advances as they hit the shelves, from the Nintendo Famicom to the current generation of consoles and computers. We're really fortunate. A good deal of gamers I know speak fondly of all of the stuff they played as a kid, whereas the very select few will be like, well, I only play NBA Jam and all this other good junk from back in the day. But indie scene games have been giving us what we thought we had lost for so long in the form of games like Shovel Knight. Now, the difficulty genre seems to be making a nice resurgence, which I think is a good thing. Platformers of old and side-scrolling beat-em-ups are making waves in a generation of what I call the how the hell am I supposed to pass this type of games. The games that make you go, I swear I had it, come on, what the hell? Shovel Knight's a good example of that, like I was saying. It surprised a lot of us because it reminded us of DuckTales on the NES, and DuckTales was one of those surprise hits because when you got games that were based on movies or TV in the NES days, you just expected them to be absolute crap. You couldn't have predicted if it was going to be a smash or if it was just going to smash you. Now, while the industry is still full of shooters, we get the interesting hits that surprise us and get us going. Things like Dark Souls, which was like, I didn't think I was going to like this. And then you realize that they're pushing you to the limits constantly, and you're being challenged. And sometimes you don't even notice that you've been playing 3 hours trying to kill the same boss. Well, sometimes that's what really gets people going. Other people are like, 15 minutes in, I quit. I was one of those unfortunate few that got stuck trying to fight skeletons and was so stubborn that I just didn't. Well, suffice it to say, I didn't play a whole lot of Dark Souls. I should give it another shot, to be fair. The way you play games might have individually familiar features, such as RPGs having some form of leveling system, and shooters tend to have a gun choices from attachments and all that good junk, but they all started from the same base. It's been said before, but games like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy changed the face of gaming forever. Then games like Wolfenstein and Doom followed up on that and gave us a genre unexplored. Today you have games that have melded several aspects of all the skills from the past. Games like Borderlands require the skills of a first-person shooter with a perk system like Diablo. That was a surprise hit in of itself when it first came out. Of course, then everybody remembers the fiasco of Diablo 3, but, that's another story. Real-time strategies and MOBAs dominate the PC competitive scene, when in the past you would have had Nintendo World Championship. So things change, but you still have a lot of familiarity and similarities. Now, the years pass on, but the foundation laid ahead of us remains just as prevalent as before. I think the best part of the future we never expected as kids is that it melds so much of what we love into new types of games and keeps it fresh and exciting. But now we talk about that dirty side of gaming, freemium games. Some think that freemium is a dirty word, others think that it's absolutely a dream. I fall somewhat into the middle. Games like League of Legends and Fortnite and Warframe are all completely playable without ever spending a single dime on anything, and to most, that sounds great. I'm okay with the games asking for money for cosmetics as long as they're not ridiculously priced. And where I'm usually against that is in games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. Now, don't get me wrong, I love both those games, though I've been unsubscribed from WoW for a long time. I still play Final Fantasy 15, but not as much as I'd like, time constraints. Now, these games are both pay-to-play, requiring a subscription fee to continue playing the games, as I'm sure many of you know. I'm mostly okay with this as well, as long as new content is being added regularly, which they seem to have been doing since their inceptions. Where I'm taken aback is the cosmetic premium items that you can purchase. Things like metallic paint or Ghost Griffin mounts, in my opinion, shouldn't cost more than $5. For instance, the paint I mentioned is about $7.50, and that's just enough to dye one set of armor, and it's not reusable. And the special mounts are around $20 to $30 on both that and WoW. These are totally outlandish, but overall it's fine. I mean, it's completely unneeded to enjoy the game in a relatively sane, grindy level that they intended. Well, relatively sane, but moving on. Loot crates, I hear the cringe, the blood-curdling hatred, the annoyance. Free-to-play games can easily fall into that pay-to-win category pretty quickly, depending on how they implement progression. Two examples from opposite ends, EA Battlefront 2 and Warhammer Vermintide 2. Now, I'm not going to go over EA's shite practices for now. I mean, maybe in a future video, because there's a lot to talk about, but it's also kind of a dead horse at this point. I will say that most of you know what they did and why their loot box system is just bullcrap. You wanted a character, you had to buy a ton of boxes and pray. That's not how you do it well. Now, Vermintide 2, you may have heard of it. You may have played it. You may even like it. I like it. It feels a nice niche left by Left 4 Dead that had done it before in a similar fashion. Now, if you're not aware, you gain a loot box item at the end of the level, and depending on how well you did, higher rarity items are more likely to drop. You also get one when you level a character. Best part of this is that they also include a system where you can reroll the stats on items, break down unwanted items, and use them to create new items. That's done right. Now, unfortunately, I see a lot of developers giving us half a game and providing the rest in DLCs or restricting progression through extreme artificial means. It's improving in my opinion, but it's still pretty bad. A lot of us spoke up on Battlefront 2 by not buying it. We spoke with our wallets, and I'm hoping that did something, but, it's EA, so they'll probably ignore us. We shouldn't encourage their bad, policies if we can avoid it, though. To sum up, games are still finding new ground and new things to try. This is good. Progress on this front is very cool. We're getting new things every day, like VR's improving, and we'll see where that goes. The Switch is doing well and shows a lot of continued promise. It's a great time to be a gamer. If you were there from the beginning, and even from Atari on, you gotta admit how good we've got it now. Well, I think this is just about enough for a first video, and honestly I can go on about this for quite a bit. But yeah, I'm looking for some feedback. Leave some comments, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want. This is only the start for me, and hopefully I'll get better at getting all this organized and editing and all that good junk. But until that time, this is Tower of Geekdom. I am Dax Ryan, and I will see you next time. Peace.